yours. Please start.
So where do we begin?
From the very beginning.
From the very beginning. Okay, friends, delighted to be here and really have this conversation about our story, so to speak. Coaching Foundation actually was born in 2006, about 12 years ago. And that was a time when organizations were struggling to build leaders and the country was growing, and that in many ways was the inspiration, so to speak, to create an institution, but also create an India-centric organization which is set in the context here to address that need. And that's how CFI actually took birth. But my own journey started maybe 5 years before that, when I got first initiated into coaching thanks to my consulting work. I used to work with a lot of entrepreneurs, and what they saw as HR problems actually appeared to be leadership challenges. And that's how I got excited about saying if these leaders could be helped, they could in turn transform their organization. So that in many ways is how the journey started. The vision was to really address the leadership development challenges. And I must say, after that was a lot of serendipity. I can't claim that we had a grand vision and we had a view of exactly how it will turn out. We certainly didn't have any idea. We thought it was a good thing to do. And that's how it got started. And how was it in your case?
Yeah, Ganesh, before I come to that, the confession to make was that before I started my coaching journey with whoever I started later, actually I was about to sign up for CFI. Okay. So, because at that point in time, really, to be honest, CFI was the only game in town.
Yeah.
There was nobody else. The only reason I didn't sign up for CFI was that at that point in time, I was looking at beyond India, and it seemed to me to be a little too restrictive in a way. That was just India.
Right.
That's probably the main reason why I did.
Right.
Otherwise, I had heard very, very good things about it. I had very good friends who had actually done the program through CFI as well.
Nice to say.
So the question before I start on my journey is a couple of things. I know you and Mahapatra started this together.
Right.
And in terms of, I mean, at that time, coaching was not even a blip in the eye.
Right.
People didn't know anything about it. And you guys came up with coaching.
Right.
And then you came up with India. Why was that? What was behind it?
About the...
Both the coaching part of it, what is it that inspired you to get into coaching as a mode of leadership development? And the other one was, why was it called the Coaching Federation of India?
In one sense, when we started thinking about coaching, we obviously didn't have a reference point. We didn't have a sense of any base knowledge, except that leaders needed help. We therefore built what I would think is a ground-up model. The first thing we felt was that there is a certain psychological dimension to good coaching, of working with the human being who's behind that executive or the entrepreneur. And therefore, we partnered with the Christian Counseling Center in Vellore and took the help of Dr. Prashantham to build that deep psychological literacy, the humanistic values which will embody the work we do. I think that was the first kind of foundation that we put. Second, we envisioned coaching as a very one-to-one personal relationship, and therefore we said we have to do it in India. It's face-to-face with the person, senior people, and so on. But most importantly, we somehow felt that help seeking is a very social process at one level. And it has to be sensitive to the Indian cultural context. And our own view was that to a large extent in India, people continue to seek help from informal sources. And we are at best in transition from moving from informal to formal sources of help. So the helpers we create would need to embody the trust, the credibility of the informal helpers with the training and rigor of formal helpers. Second, the expectations of a helper is that he must be older than me, he must have wisdom, he must have been there and done that, he must understand my context, and so on and so forth. And therefore, that seemed very important for us to build in. And finally, a lot of what we heard about behavioral coaching in the West was, to a large extent, about dealing with the alpha male, so to speak. I'm dramatizing it for a moment. But in India, the need was more about helping people realize their potential. So those were, in some ways, how we landed at what we thought was an India model.
Okay. Let's go a little deeper into that aspect of where are you in terms of delving deeper into those a little later. But to start my own journey, yes. Many of the people who've been with Coach Arya, they probably know this a bit. And first of all, I mean, the way that I grew up with my corporate career with Hindustan Lever, there are many of you here from the Levers fraternity, was that it was a totally directive approach. And that's what remains to be the norm in most corporate sectors today, however much they might claim to be different. It's like if the boss told you to jump, and basically your answer would be, how high, sir? And today, if the same thing is asked of a millennial, the millennial will tell you to go and jump. So there's a huge difference in terms of what has happened over the years. But I grew up in that kind of a generation where listening was not part of, like today, right in the beginning, Bhaskar and then Suresh talked about listening being a leadership skill. And certainly in my generation, listening was not considered to be a leadership skill. Yeah. In fact, opposite of it. If you listened, you are a damn fool. Because if you were a leader, all that you really did was to give orders. Right. That is how we grew up. And deep down, I resented it. But like Marshall Goldsmith said, what you got here won't get you there. But I got reasonably far with that kind of an approach. Moved out of that. And then my life has always been a series of misadventures in many ways. And I went into a monastic path. I tried to be a sannyasi for about 6 years. I didn't have a Ferrari to sell, but I aspired to be a monk. Turned out to be, again, a misadventure. At the end of 6 years, 6.5 years, I discovered that the guy I was following was fake, like most of those guys are, without an exception. So I was at crossroads, really didn't know what to do with my life. And many of you here may know this gentleman. R.R. Nair is an ex-colleague of mine from Levers. Harish and I known him for several years. One day I met him and asked him, hey, R.R., I'm stuck, I don't know what I'm going to do. He said, why don't you be a coach? Honestly, I'd never heard this word before, and this was not many years ago. This was just about probably 2010, after you had started your coaching company. I said, I'm not a football player, I'm not a cricket player. What kind of a coach would I make? He started laughing, and he explained to me what an executive coach was. So to be honest, I mean, that's why I say today, you don't have to know anything about anything to become a coach. You just have it within you. You have to be really committed to it. It's not about what you know or what you don't know. So then I looked around, and of course I considered CFI, but eventually I talked to two people, Ajay Nangalia mostly, John Sirovicia, his brother-in-law. Ajay said, yeah, you know, there is some lot to be said about getting yourself credentialed internationally because you've worked abroad for several years. I had worked abroad for 20 years, and my aspirations were more global. So I took up an ICF credential course, and I was pronounced said in the morning 5. Technically, that's correct, but 2 of them had already left India by that time, so I was the 3rd PCC coach here. And that is how the whole thing started. The vision, again, I was an accidental coach, to be honest. But the vision was that I loved to teach for what it was worth. And I was doing some work with B schools and all that stuff. So I wanted to train people. So I approached a training agency that I learned from. Can I become a trainer with you? I basically said. we have enough people, but if you want to take the risk and you want to start something in India, why didn't you do that? And they really didn't believe that anything would happen because they had tried it in China, it failed miserably. And that was the time I met Harish and the whole cohort at NHRE, and we started with 25 people the last month of 2011, soon after an NHRE conference ended. That's how we have grown. So just same way as you said, there wasn't a very specific vision, and somebody in the morning talked about the journey rather than the destination.
Right, right.
For me, it was more about a journey. It's about something to do with, is there some way that one could contribute to a larger change in society and things like that? So that is what led me to that.
Interesting. Well, so having come this far, useful to kind of maybe take a few minutes to reflect on where we seem to have landed. What would you say?
Why don't you go first?
I think it's been, I must say I'm very happy. I'm very happy with what we've managed to create. I think more than anything else, we've created a community of about 200 coaches, of which about 120 odd are practicing coaches. We're hugely connected. We enjoy being helpers. We really enjoy being helpers in a real sense. The people that we work with are very happy. They are able to experience the benefit of seeking help. And from a time when we had to explain what coaching is, we've reached a somewhat scary point where the talent manager might say, show me some more profiles of coaches. So I think adaptation has been quite rapid, I must say, in the last few years. That's been a good sign. Having said that, my concern is that we stop seeing coaching as a solution to fix problems and use it to catch leaders early and help them realize their potential. And that's really if you ask me, that is the institutional struggle that I'm trying to grapple with. How do we move away from using coaching to deal with leaders who have problems, to use coaching for people who can actually do better, who have a long runway in their life and career? That is really what's the good thing and the difficult thing, I would say.
Right. Yeah, what you're saying makes a lot of sense. See, first few years when I started, it was a bit of a one-horse outfit. I was doing the training, I was doing coaching, whatever, doing reasonably well. But soon I realized that it wasn't scalable. I wasn't going to get anywhere if I was just going to do coaching in Bangalore, which was the base, and then I started doing something in Mumbai. So then at a point in time, I asked around some of the people whom we had trained, and ICF, of course, has this requirement that you have to be an ICF credentialed coach to be a trainer as well. So we moved from what is called an ACSTH. I was partnering somebody, then I started on my own ACSTH and ACTP and all that stuff. So it was in a progression that way. And so that is how we grew Coacharya, as an alliance of people who we would work with. And one of the major differences that we brought about in that field of coaching, and which to many people seems very normal today, but is very different from what is done internationally, is that most coach training companies pay people by the hour, the trainers, whereas we share the fees on a percentage basis. So typically, any associate coach who works with us would get 2 to 3 times as much as with anybody else. Like the first company that I trained with, they used to pay people about $40 an hour or something, which is pitiable, irrespective of the size of the class. I felt that was terrible. So we changed the model, but we wanted to grow, and which is the stage we are in. And then, thanks to Pranav, we opened up in the United States. And we used to have this discussion, what do we focus on, coach training or coaching? We didn't want to become an agglomerator in coaching. To that extent, yes, we could get people whom we can recommend, but primary business was coach training, so which is where we are today. Whether the happiness, the fulfillment part of it, sure, we have sort of passed any of the visualizations that I had, in a sense. Okay, and many of our people know that I'm very good at visualization. That is something that I keep telling everybody, visualize. So yeah, we said we would have about 250 at a point in time. We crossed at 500 at a point in time. Now we are looking at 1,000. All that would happen. We have master coaches. All that would happen. But is that something which is seen to be a limit? I don't think so. It's still pushing beyond.
Right.
So that is the next thing that we come to. Where would you like to go?
So, couple of things when you spoke about paying by the hour or being a coach provider and a coach education body triggered a couple of thoughts in me. We are a coach provider and we create our own pool of coaches. And the way it has helped us is because we are a coach provider, and I have personally kind of reviewed or supervised over 600 paid coaching engagements in the last several years. So I have deep insights into what contributes to effectiveness in coaching, when does coaching work or not work, what are some of the pre-requirements for setting up effectiveness. And we were able to bring that back into the classroom and constantly kind of tweak and evolve our coaching model. I think that was one good thing that we were able to do. The second thing is in terms of, you're talking about paying by the hour for the programs. Even when we chose our model, we said that if we really have to ensure that our coaches and our clients see value, we need to not adopt the Western model, which is a therapeutic model of paying the therapist by the hour. We have to pay for the relationship and spend as much time as required with the client till he or she sees the benefit. And that's a kind of value we hold very dearly, that we say, whatever it is, you will stay till the client sees the benefit. And that's something our coaches find very valuable. But having said that, I want to come back to the point you spoke about creating the supply. And the constant question is there an oversupply of coaches in India who are certified? And my fear is yes. And the reason I say that is there are still certain preferences and views people about who should be a coach. One is the credentials and the competencies that we impart. The other is the professional expertise that the coach has, given his or her length of years of experience and so on. So one of the challenges we face is constantly we ask ourselves that if we admit this person into a program, into our program, do we believe this person will ever get hired as a coach? And if the answer is no, we tell the person, you might make a great coach, but I'm afraid you may not be hired as a coach. And that's not a very good conversation. What do you think?
Yeah, it's interesting. When people ask me about the ROI, my usual answer is it really depends. And very honestly, I don't want to get in too much there because I'm not in any way an assignment provider. And we don't at all get into that space. And I also, personally, I would much rather train someone who is looking for a larger change in the societal transformation than say, hey, I want to be an executive coach and doing that. The fact is that, like in your case, we get most of the people who are executives, who are professionals. But more and more, we are getting also people who are from, let's say, the social entrepreneur sector and so on and so forth. I really would like to create a separate stream which may not be anything to do with ICF credentialing, but training younger people as coaches who can in turn work with the millennials and so on and so forth. We're already doing some experiments with that. So which is then bringing back to this question, are there too many coaches in India? The fact is, when I did an informal survey, today, let's say, just a total number of coaches, ICF credential alone in India would be about 1,000 plus people from CFI and other places which are formal training, but perhaps not the international credentialing. As against which, I guess probably there are 50,000 people who call themselves coaches. Who have no clue about what coaching is. Like, for example, even someone as eminent as RR, when my first discussions went with him, was about, you had a lot of experience troubleshooting and solutioning and so on and so forth, you'll make a great coach. And that is the general impression in the market about if you're a coach, there's hardly any distinction between mentoring and coaching. Yeah. So most people feel perfectly okay that they call themselves coaches, even if they are mentors with absolutely no framework. Yeah. So that differentiation, if that happens, I don't think there are enough coaches. Even if those people have to be retrained in the whole process of what coaching is about. Right. It's about, like for example, there was a lot of conversation in the morning about Cindy talking about a reflective space that is being created. It's an internal exploration. It's not about the external obstacles, but it's an internal obstacle, right, which is what you realize. And then you start, let's say, going through, and I'm sure your whole approach using counseling, Carl Rogers, you would be going into in great detail, or is it Sir John Whitmore or Otto Schama or any of those people. It's really very much deep in the internal reflective sector. So when you look at it that way, I don't think there are enough number of coaches, number one. The second is, I also believe that coaching is a way of life. Yeah. If we can help people to move into that space of asking rather than telling. I mean, we use a very, very simple example to work with people to separate the mentoring, coaching, and all the other stuff. If you look at it as two axes, horizontal and vertical, and you look at it as the future and the past, and asking and telling, you would find that coaching is on the future and the asking. Whereas something like consulting is probably future and telling. Right. And if you're looking at therapy, it is probably the past and the telling, and so on and so forth. There are very few interventions out there which address the future and the asking. And that is the specialty of coaching. And the asking is about you looking at the future purely from a very serious internal reflection, rather than somebody telling you, hey, you can do this, that, whatever it is. Now, why do we stop? My whole inquiry is about, why do we stop with executives? In my opinion, having been one for most of my life, and a pretty successful one, I think executives are dumb. It's a serious truth. There are many other people today, and those days we had no option. I mean, if you graduated like I did several decades ago, the only option open to me was to be anything meaningful to my parents. I had to be a doctor or an engineer, right, failing which, perhaps a lawyer. If I was anything less, then I'm useless. But today, if you poll a kid, I would say 10% of the kids would say that they want to be a doctor or an engineer or a lawyer. They are looking at a much larger, I'm not just talking about IT, but they're looking at a much larger space. They want to be many other things. They want to be artists. They want to be sports people. They want to be this. They want to be that. Their potential is vast. And that is where I think coaching can be extraordinarily powerful. And that is where we can help in expanding their potential. Right. And that's a space I really would like to see coaching get into. Right. Whether it'll happen in my generation or another generation, I don't know. But that's right, what I think. Yeah.
So what I hear you saying is that one, and that's a very interesting perspective, that it's in some ways a life skill, a core competence to work in organizations, a way of managing. You spoke about the directive style of your time. And therefore, it's a competence and a capability that everyone should possess with no strings attached. I think that's an interesting perspective. The second, when you change the context, we don't have an oversupply, we have a short supply. If you change the canvas, then the whole picture looks very different. And I think that's That's a very, it's a bold and it's also a very adventurous perspective to take.
Perhaps foolish.
No, not really, not really. And one of the areas, Ram, um, because you're a coach, um, more often than not, your friend tells you, hey, listen, can you talk to my son? I think he's lost his way and he's confused and he's not figured out. After 4 years of engineering, he wants to now pursue some entertainment management or something. And so I've been therefore quite excited about this and doing a lot of research and talking to lots of people. And I stumbled upon this whole concept of emerging adulthood, which is that as societies become more affluent, children, we became adults on the age 21. We had to take charge of our life. But today with affluence, people, adulthood emerges till they are 28, 29, 30, and so on and so forth. They can change their mind so many times about life, about work, about relationships, about so many things, because they can afford to. And therefore, to deal with that period, they need life skills. And if they have, they can be great successes and they can learn. If they don't have, it's a huge misery for them and their parents. And that's where what you're saying, if we have large numbers of people they can have access to, I think they will make great choices. And I'm quite excited about this dimension of whether there can be enough number of people, and they don't need counseling. They don't yet perhaps have problems. But if they don't make those choices, they may need a counselor. And therefore, how can we use people who have the business context knowledge or have had life experiences with these coaching skills to be available to these youngsters in the emerging adulthood is one thing in my head. The other question I want to ask you, Ram, is when do you think people will start paying for coaching from their pocket?
There are some people here, I don't want to name them, but who are earning pretty well by people who pay from their pocket.
Wow.
Okay. And we could ask them to stand up. I know at least about a half a dozen people who do that.
I love that. That's
yeah. So it's happening. But yes, most of us, I think, it's companies which sponsor them, and it's easier, okay, for us to market as well. So it's a different sense. Okay, that could perhaps be an issue. But if the price of, I think today, I should consider myself responsible for that as well. We have generally, I've deliberately priced myself out of the market because I don't have the time. But coaching per se is today too expensive for most people to afford it. So therefore, coaching has to become much more reasonable, which then leads into the other subject. Why should coaching be individual? I find more and more clear evidence to show that individual coaching is not effective. It has to be team coaching, because you train, coach an individual, that person goes back into the organizational environment. That team is not ready for that person who's been coached, and therefore there is a problem. So today we have a concept of what is called the systemic coaching, which is systemic team or leadership coaching, where we are doing quite a bit of an experiment on this. In fact, Preeti was here this morning. Ramesh is familiar from TCS. They are adopting a systemic coaching model. I've done some work with them, where it's groups, you develop them into teams, and you work with them. In some other companies, we are doing that. It's extremely powerful. It's much more powerful. And you give sufficient time, the famous CCL model of action learning. So you have the session, you allow time for that to settle down and moving forward. So these are multiple ways that coaching can evolve. And we're also trying to bring in, like you did with the psychological aspect, we are bringing with Eastern spirituality, where because of my personal background, plus a lot of work in neurolinguistic programming, transactional analysis, all kinds of stuff. So OD and all that stuff, trying to get multiple dimensions into coaching. All of them are relevant. But the biggest thing is like what you said. Now, in India, you're right, there's probably some truth in that, unlike, let's say, most Western countries, it's not even at 21. At 18, pretty much the kid is out of the house. Even if the parents want them to stay, the kids don't want to stay. They are independent. By the time they are 21, they are usually fully independent. But having said that, in India, maybe it doesn't happen. That's one part of it. The other is more and more I'm seeing in, because I spent some time in the United States, people make a lot more money, get much better positions than what they ever imagined at a much earlier age than we all did.
Right.
What happened to me at the age of 40, I was very, very young at that time. I became a CEO at 40, worked with people who were pretty much 55 and things like that. But today there are people at 30, they are startup CEOs.
Right.
But one of the things I notice is that many of them have made so much of money, it doesn't fulfill them. They are not satisfied. Money becomes a dissatisfier. They know what dissatisfies them, but they do not know what satisfies them. I call them the confused generation. In both cases, I think the basic issue is the same. They lack a purpose. They lack a meaning in life. Now, question is, are there coaches who are sufficiently without baggage themselves, who are non-judgmental, who have developed their own purpose and meaning in life, who can lead these people to specific purposes and meaning? And that is really what the world needs, in my opinion, very, very badly, to help people find a purpose and meaning. And if you're able to do that, I think we could solve. I mean, one of the things that came up in the LSIP, the whole thing about education, is ultimately, is there a set of values and beliefs through which you can define your own, why are you here? What's your purpose in life? This is a question how many of us really ask ourselves. We wake up every morning. My question to every one of you here is, do you wake up with a dream every morning? If you don't, what is your life worth? It's worth nothing. You're repeating the same life. If you have seen a movie called The Groundhog's Day, you get up every morning and repeat the previous day. Every day you use the same karabat and kirabat or whatever nonsense you eat. Or maybe one day you eat an omelette instead of toast and then you say, hey, I've made a huge difference in my life. Is that the difference that you're looking for? Is there a hero's journey in your life? Is there a call in your life? Can you as a coach inspire somebody else to do that? And if we can do that, I think we are making a huge difference to society.
So that's a fairly audacious vision, Ram. But that's very interesting of looking at a very different canvas of touching people, life, purpose, dealing with some existential questions, youth, education. You spoke about that some time back. I think it's a bold vision, and I like that. For me, my most immediate vision is I'm kind of picturing this situation where an individual picks up the phone or goes to our website and say, I want coaching because I think I want to be a better executive and better this and better that. But we all know that after the first few discussions, the coach quite often becomes his therapist and counselor. He's talking about the difficulty he has in having a conversation with his grown-up daughter, about his work-life balance and about his lifestyle ailments and all the other troubles he has. And he says, you're the first guy in my life who ever listened to me without judging me. So there is a certain therapeutic role that coaches are playing without saying so, without calling it, or documenting it in the three-way meetings. But that's a big contribution. But I think both of us are saying that there is, with the values of being coaching oriented, of being non-judgmental, of being present, or even being a wounded healer, someone who's had experiences, and you spoke with such great candor about your, some of the, struggles and how it helped you and perhaps inspired you. I think there is a potential for all of us to touch someone's life. That's what I'm picking up, Ram.
Yeah, let me close with this pretty much. I think we are nearing the time. You're absolutely right. I think at some point in time, you call it therapeutical or therapeutic. There are some friends of mine who call it healing. Actually, one of my colleagues here, Subhash, he puts on a healer, which I think is very appropriate.
Right.
To me, coaching is spiritual. It helps you to move from the me focus into the we focus.
Right.
And many of you who probably know something about the Bhagavad Gita, there is a chapter 15, I think, Daiva Asura Sampatya Yoga, but at the end of it, Krishna says, a demon is one who thinks about me, and a divine is one who thinks about we. That's all the real shift that needs to happen. And coaching, I think, does make that shift. It brings you into that space where you can really be something different. So yes, most of what we have said, if we can lead it to there, and if every one of us can really look at it from that perspective, the world would be a better place. Yeah. That's probably dementia. So, so with that,
hey, thank you.
Thanks a lot,
Wonderful
Ganesh.
talking to you.